In 1983, the children's television program Sesame Street aired what seemed like a harmless educational parody, transforming the Beatles' classic Let It Be into an alphabet learning song called Letter B. The segment featured a puppet band called the Beatles performing on their fictional album Sesame Road via Lemon Records, complete with musical arrangements that closely mirrored the original composition. What followed was an unexpected legal clash that revealed the complex intersection of educational fair use, music publishing rights, and corporate entertainment law. Join us as we explore how Sesame Street's innocent parody triggered a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. Sesame Street's musical innovation. Sesame Street had built its reputation on clever musical parodies that transformed contemporary hits into educational tools for children. Chris Surf, the show's music producer, had successfully created child-friendly versions of songs by Billy Idol, the Rolling Stones, and Bruce Springsteen, turning rock anthems into learning opportunities without legal complications. In 1983, Surf's creative eye landed on Let It Be, recognizing its melodic structure as perfect for teaching the alphabet. The resulting parody featured lyrics that replaced the Beatles' philosophical message with simple educational content about the letter B, maintaining the song's recognizable melody and harmonic progression while completely transforming its purpose and meaning. The segment aired December 2, 1983, as part of Sesame Street's regular programming. The puppet performers, dubbed the Beatles, delivered the educational message with the same earnest sincerity that characterized the show's approach to learning. The production values matched the show's high standards, with careful attention to musical arrangement and visual presentation that made the alphabet lesson both memorable and engaging. For most viewers, the segment represented exactly what Sesame Street did best, taking familiar cultural references and repurposing them for educational benefit. The transformation seemed complete and appropriate, with clear educational intent and obvious satirical elements that distinguished it from commercial exploitation. But the musical similarity to the original Beatles composition proved to be both the segment's greatest strength as an educational tool and its greatest vulnerability from a legal perspective. The melody remained recognizable enough that children could connect the educational content to a familiar tune. But that same recognizability raised questions about whether the parody had transformed the original work sufficiently to qualify for fair use protection. The legal assault. The response from the Beatles publishing company was swift and substantial. Northern Songs, which controlled the rights to the Beatles catalog, filed a lawsuit seeking $5.5 million in damages against the Children's Television Workshop, the nonprofit organization responsible for producing Sesame Street. The legal action represented one of the most aggressive enforcement efforts ever directed at educational programming, signaling that even beloved children's shows were not immune from copyright scrutiny when they borrowed from valuable musical catalogs. The lawsuit's scope and financial demands suggested that Northern Songs viewed the parody as a serious threat to their commercial interests rather than a harmless educational exercise. By 1983, Northern Songs bore little resemblance to the company originally founded in 1963 by Dick James, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and Brian Epstein. The original Beatles members had long since sold their shares, and control of the catalog had passed to Australian billionaire Robert Holmes à Court, who approached the Beatles' music primarily as a valuable commercial asset requiring aggressive protection. This corporate perspective fundamentally altered how potential infringements were evaluated, prioritizing market protection over cultural considerations or educational value. The nonprofit status of Sesame Street provided no shield against legal action when corporate interests perceived a threat to their intellectual property. The legal strategy reflected broader concerns about precedent and market protection. Northern Songs argued that allowing Sesame Street to create Beatles-like compositions without licensing could establish a dangerous precedent that commercial advertisers might exploit. If a major television program could successfully imitate Beatles songs for free under the banner of parody, what would prevent advertising agencies from creating similar sound-alikes to sell products without paying licensing fees? Fair use defense. Sesame Street's legal defense rested on the principle of fair use, specifically the protection afforded to parody when it transforms original works for educational or satirical purposes. The letter B segment clearly served an educational function, teaching alphabet recognition to preschool children through musical repetition and association. The transformation was substantial, replacing contemplative lyrics about acceptance and peace with simple educational content about letter recognition, while maintaining enough musical similarity to serve its pedagogical purpose. The educational context strengthened Sesame Street's position significantly. Courts have generally been more sympathetic to fair use claims when the alleged infringement serves clear educational purposes, particularly when the user is a non-profit organization serving the public interest. The Children's Television Workshop could demonstrate that their use of the Beatles' musical structure was specifically designed to benefit children's learning rather than to compete commercially with the original recording. But the musical similarity between Letter B and Let It Be created complications for the fair use defense. While the lyrics were completely transformed, the melody, harmonic progression, and overall musical structure remained largely intact. This raised questions about whether the parody had borrowed more than necessary to achieve its educational purpose, and whether the resulting composition might serve as a market substitute for the original in certain contexts. The case highlighted the ongoing tension between protecting creators' rights and allowing transformative uses that serve broader social purposes. Michael Jackson's intervention.
I have worked with a couple of other people. I worked with Michael Jackson and Stevie Wonder.
And how did he repay you? He bought your songs.
Hey, you see?
Yeah, isn't that nice?
I couldn't take him anywhere. No, yes, so it kind of is the first time since those lads.
The legal landscape shifted dramatically in 1985 when Michael Jackson acquired the Beatles' publishing catalog for about $50 million. Jackson's purchase represented one of the most significant transactions in music publishing history, transferring control of some of the most valuable compositions in popular music to an artist who understood both the commercial and artistic value of the catalog. The acquisition also brought a fundamentally different perspective to enforcement decisions, as Jackson's own experience as a performing artist influenced his approach to disputes over derivative uses of the music. Jackson's response to the ongoing lawsuit demonstrated this different perspective immediately. According to Chris Cerf, Jackson viewed the legal action against the children's program as ridiculous and moved quickly to resolve the dispute. Rather than pursuing the multi-million-dollar damages, he settled the entire lawsuit for the symbolic amount of $50. The resolution effectively ended the legal threat while acknowledging the technical copyright issues without imposing punitive damages on the educational program. The deeper story.
John, can you tell me what happened with Allen Klein? Why did you and the other two try to decide finally to get rid of him?
I don't want to go into the details of it. Let's say that possibly Paul's suspicions were right.
The Sesame Street dispute was merely one episode in a much larger saga of legal battles that had defined the Beatles' business relationships since the breakup. The most significant was when Paul McCartney made the extraordinary decision to sue his three bandmates in December 1970. The internal lawsuit represented one of the most painful chapters in Beatles history. The roots of the legal action traced back to the band's hiring of Allen Klein as their manager. Klein, a New York accountant who had previously managed Sam Cooke, was favored by Lennon, Harrison, and Starr as the solution to their business management needs. But McCartney harbored deep suspicions about Klein based on his controversial dealings with the Rolling Stones. Suspicions reinforced when Mick Jagger reportedly warned McCartney against working with Klein. His opposition to Klein intensified after the manager hired producer Phil Spector to complete the Let It Be album, originally produced by the band's longtime collaborator George Martin. These creative and business conflicts culminated in McCartney's announcement in April 1970 that he was no longer working with the Beatles, effectively ending the band's active collaboration. The legal process proved successful in 1971 when McCartney won the suit to dissolve the Beatles' partnership, though the band's finances remained in receivership until all four members could agree on acceptable terms for their separation. Now it's time to hear from you. What was the most surprising part of the story? Let us know in the comments section below.